Every moment arrives exactly as it is. The world does not bend to desire, and the mind cannot be forced into peace. The more you try to control every thought, every emotion, every outcome, the more tension you create within yourself. The Stoics understood this centuries ago. It is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And once you truly understand that, everything begins to change. We spend much of our lives chasing fulfillment in external things. Recognition, success, validation, wealth. We convince ourselves that peace exists somewhere ahead of us, waiting behind the next achievement. But the harder we chase it, the more distant it seems. The mind resists force. Trying to control what cannot be controlled only strengthens the discomfort we wish to escape. True steadiness does not come from shaping life into our preferred form. It comes from learning to guide our perception, our judgments, and our responses. Peace is not something captured through struggle. It emerges naturally when unnecessary resistance fades away. This is the path of Stoicism. And today, it matters just as much as it did centuries ago. The mind behaves in strange ways. The more you suppress a thought, the stronger it becomes. The more you resist a feeling, the more power it gains over your attention. This is not weakness. It is simply the nature of awareness. Thoughts and emotions arise on their own. They cannot always be commanded into silence. Yet most suffering comes not from these experiences themselves, but from the fight against them, the insistence that reality should be different from what it is. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That insight changes everything. Freedom is found not by controlling life, but by changing the way you relate to it. This pattern extends into desire itself. We believe fulfillment depends on gaining something external, status, wealth, recognition. Yet every time we attach our peace to outcomes, we make ourselves fragile. Every delay, every failure, every unmet expectation feels personal. Seneca observed, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Desire becomes dangerous when it transforms from preference into necessity. When the mind believes it must achieve something in order to feel complete, it traps itself in endless dissatisfaction. The Stoics never taught passivity. They did not say to abandon goals or responsibility. Action still matters. Growth still matters. But there is a difference between acting with clarity and acting from compulsion. When you stop tying your worth to outcomes, your effort becomes lighter, sharper, more deliberate. You still move forward, but without carrying the invisible weight of desperation. And that changes the quality of experience itself. Challenges no longer feel like personal attacks. Discomfort becomes something observed rather than feared. Obstacles stop appearing as proof of inadequacy and instead become opportunities to practice composure. This is where real resilience begins. Most people believe peace comes from eliminating discomfort. But Stoicism suggests something entirely different. Peace comes from learning that discomfort itself is not the enemy. A feeling arises. Immediately, the mind says, "This shouldn't be happening. I don't want this. Something is wrong." And suddenly the experience transforms into suffering. The original feeling may have been temporary, but resistance gives it permanence. You are no longer simply experiencing emotion, you are fighting it. And that inner conflict creates tension far heavier than the feeling itself. Epictetus explained it clearly. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. The discomfort is rarely what traps you. The belief that discomfort should not exist is what traps you. Once you see this clearly, a subtle shift begins to happen. You stop trying to force every emotion away. You stop treating every difficult thought as a threat. Instead, you observe. A feeling appears. You notice it. You allow it to exist without immediately reacting. At first this feels unnatural because the mind is conditioned to fix, suppress, and control everything. But gradually, something changes. The feeling loses intensity because you stop feeding it resistance. This does not mean emotions disappear instantly. Some stay longer than others. Some return repeatedly. But your relationship to them transforms. You are no longer trapped inside automatic reaction. And over time, this creates a different kind of stability, one not dependent on perfect circumstances. That same principle applies to desire and ambition. Desire often disguises itself as necessity. The mind whispers, "You need more. You must achieve this first. Only then will you be enough." And without noticing it, you begin living from a sense of deficiency. You believe the next achievement will finally complete you. But each pursuit reinforces the idea that you are incomplete right now. That is the hidden danger of attachment. The goal itself is not the problem. The problem begins when your peace depends on reaching it. The Stoics taught that fulfillment rooted entirely in external outcomes is fragile because external conditions are never fully under your control. You can influence events. You can prepare, work, and act wisely. But you cannot command the world to unfold according to your desires. Once the mind accepts this, effort changes completely. You still pursue meaningful goals. You still improve yourself. But your emotional stability is no longer chained to success or failure. And paradoxically, this often makes you more effective. Without the fear of failure clouding your mind, action becomes clearer. Creativity improves. Decisions become more precise. Effort stops being driven by panic and starts being guided by purpose. There is an important distinction here. Letting go is not the same as giving up. Stoicism is not emotional numbness. It is not laziness or indifference. It is disciplined engagement without unhealthy attachment. You continue acting, but without demanding certainty from life. And that creates an extraordinary sense of freedom. Imagine trying to fall asleep by force. The harder you try, the more awake you become. Peace works much the same way. The more desperately you chase happiness, the more distant it feels. The mind cannot be bullied into calmness. Happiness often emerges only after the compulsion to capture it disappears. This is why moments of peace usually arrive unexpectedly, during a quiet walk, a conversation, or a simple moment of presence. Not because you forced them into existence, but because for a brief moment, the mind stopped struggling. The psychologist Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That perspective aligns deeply with Stoic thought. You are not every passing emotion. You are not every intrusive thought. You are not defined by temporary discomfort. You are defined by how you respond. When resistance fades, perception itself changes. Ordinary moments become richer. Attention sharpens. The world feels less filtered through anxiety and comparison. Without constant evaluation, life regains texture. Conversations become more genuine because you no longer seek validation in every interaction. Work becomes more focused because your worth is no longer tied entirely to results. Creativity becomes freer because fear loses its grip. The mind begins operating with clarity instead of compulsion. And perhaps most importantly, time itself starts to feel different. When you stop obsessively measuring progress and comparing yourself to imagined standards, experience slows down. Life becomes something lived rather than constantly analyzed. This is the paradox the Stoics understood. The less you cling, the more fully you engage. Freedom from attachment does not reduce life. It deepens it. The same principle applies to habits of thought. Most people spend years unconsciously reinforcing patterns of judgment, comparison, and dissatisfaction. The mind becomes conditioned to search for problems even when none exist. Effort creates resistance. Resistance creates tension. Tension strengthens suffering. And the cycle repeats endlessly. But awareness interrupts the cycle. The moment you observe your mind instead of blindly obeying it, space appears between stimulus and reaction. In that space lies freedom. You begin noticing how expectations silently shape experience. How the need for certainty creates anxiety. How comparison destroys presence. How compulsive striving obscures the richness already available in ordinary life. The Stoics believed that inner peace depends less on external events and more on the quality of perception itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." This does not mean pretending everything is positive. It means recognizing that interpretation shapes experience. When expectations loosen, the mind becomes lighter. You stop demanding perfection from yourself. You stop needing every moment to feel meaningful. You stop treating discomfort as failure. And gradually, life begins to feel more spacious. Simple experiences regain their depth: a quiet morning, a meal, a conversation, the sound of rain, the rhythm of your own breathing. Not because the world changed, but because your relationship to it changed. The energy once consumed by compulsive striving becomes available for awareness, creativity, discipline, and intentional action. That is true freedom. Not freedom from challenge. Not freedom from emotion. But freedom from unnecessary inner conflict. The Stoic path is ultimately not about controlling life. It is about mastering your relationship with life. You cannot prevent uncertainty. You cannot eliminate discomfort forever. You cannot force the world into permanent stability. But you can cultivate clarity. You can strengthen judgment. You can respond instead of react. And in doing so, you discover a form of peace that external circumstances cannot easily take away. The quiet freedom you have been searching for has never been hidden in endless striving, constant control, or external validation. It has always existed in your ability to observe clearly, release unnecessary attachment, and remain present with life as it unfolds. Every moment becomes lighter when you stop trying to force reality into a perfect shape. Every breath becomes steadier when expectation loosens its grip. And every experience becomes richer when the mind no longer treats peace as something distant to be achieved. This is the strength Stoicism points toward. Not domination over life, but composure within it. Thank you for being part of Stoic Mindset. If these ideas resonated with you, consider subscribing and continuing this journey with us. Explore one of the next videos on the screen, and continue building the calm, clarity, and inner discipline that Stoicism teaches.